For today's show, right, in light of the Super Bowl coming up, I kind of wanted to just simplify things for you guys just a bit. I think a lot of us have these preconceived notions about what a team needs to win a championship. They need Bill Belichick. They need a Hall of Fame head coach. They need 10 Pro Bowlers, right? Both are false. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to list five very important attributes that all championship caliber teams possess, right? Only five. I'm not going to go crazy. And I'm going to give you guys some examples on the back end, right? So it'll be fun. So let's jump into it. The number one attribute that a championship caliber team needs, right? Teams that win championships have depth, right? What do I mean by depth? The number two running back, right? Not the starter, can come in the game and rip off 2 or 3 big runs in the fourth quarter to help ice the game, right? To help close the game out. Or the backup linebacker that normally plays on special teams can come in on defense and make that crucial third down stop when his number's called. That's what I mean by depth. Now, granted, some of it has to do with talent acquisition, right? You have, some teams, they just, I don't know where they find these guys. They'll draft them in the bottom of the draft, 6th, 7th round. They find some real gems. So some of it is talent acquisition, but I think much more of it is coaching and preparation. And this says a lot about a coach. Are your bottom roster guys, are they ready for big moments? Contrary to popular belief, it's not enough to have a team full of stars, right? All your starters are surface level guys that are really good. That's not enough, right? Because if that's how your team is made up, your game plan is predicated on these guys staying healthy. And what do we know about the NFL? It's a game of attrition. Essentially putting yourself in a position where you'll always be a few injuries away from being a bad football team, right? Ask the Dallas Cowboys. Sean Lee was like the heart and soul of their defense for like 5 years, right? Anytime he got hurt, they were done. I think when looking at examples, I think the first one that kind of comes to mind is the New England Patriots. Super Bowl 49, I want to say. Super Bowl 49, you had Malcolm Butler. He was their number 3, number 4 corner. He was undrafted. As a matter of fact, he was an undrafted rookie in that game. And he makes the game-sealing interception to close things out and beat Seattle and give Tom Brady at that time his 5th championship. I could be right, could be wrong, but I want to say it was his 5th. He's at 7 now. Yeah, so it was his 5th championship. Another game, you had Ricky Proehl in 1999, the NFC Championship against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Great game, by the way. He catches that back shoulder fade from Kurt Warner, probably easily the biggest play of that game, right? So they go on, they get past a very good Tampa Bay team, and they win a championship. So it's historical moments like that kind of teaches us as fans or teaches anybody that loves the sport that having a deep, well-rounded roster is important, right? So that's one. You got to have depth. 2, teams that win championships have a defined offensive identity. This is my pet peeve. This is probably one of the most important ones, the most important attributes, right? What is a defined offensive identity, if you guys ask? Basically, it's a team knows how they want to attack a defense. There's no confusion because they have a clear understanding of who they are. They know who they are. They know their strengths. They know their weaknesses, right? So they don't try to game plan outside of that. They don't try to get exotic, right? And to go a little bit even deeper, teams that have a strong and defined offensive identity, they prioritize getting the ball in the hands of their best players. They get the ball in the hands of their best players. I would say this year there are 2 teams in the same division, right? The NFC West. The Rams and the 49ers that I think embody this. You look at the Rams, they got a myriad of weapons. Odell Beckham, Tyler Higbee, Sony Michel. Now you got Cam Akers back. But, let's not make any mistake about it. It's a Cooper Kupp-led offense. The entire offense, especially watching this year, everything, the focus is to create mismatches for Cooper Kupp. He's going to, especially if you get him one-on-one coverage, he's going to win. And yeah, so sometimes, don't get me wrong, sometimes they mix it up. You may see a couple runs from Sony Michel. You may see a seam route from Tyler Higbee. For the most part, it's Cooper Kupp on a slant, on a comeback route, on a post corner, on a fade, right? Just all these different routes. And Sean McVay does such a great job at scheming him open and create mismatches that it's nothing to see him like on a safety or a linebacker. You're like, this guy's having the best year of any wide receiver. How the hell is the linebacker covering him? How do you lose him in coverage, right? But that just shows how much the offense is built around what he does well. So the 49ers on the other end, I think they're much more simplistic in comparison. They're going to run the football. They're a physical football team, kind of throwback, big, strong offensive line. Trent Williams is a monster at left tackle, but they're going to run the football with any of their 2 to 3 running backs, and they're going to Deebo Samuel you to death. Right, he's their wide receiver, but not only do they move him around as a wide receiver, they run him out the backfield, similar to how Minnesota used to do with Percy Harvin back in the day, right? And Kyle Shanahan makes no mystery about it. He's like, Deebo Samuel's going to get the ball. Can you figure it out? Can you stop it? What I want you guys to understand is that great teams are not going to overcomplicate things. They're going to make you prove that you can stop what they do well. So that's 2, right? Great teams that win championships have a defined offensive identity. So 3, a championship team must have a defense that is either great or great at one thing. I'm going to repeat this. A championship team must have a defense that's great. They're either great or they're great at one thing. So this means that a defense is they're either dominant overall or they lead the league or are near the top of the league in some specific category. So, for example, you got the 2013 Seattle Seahawks, right? We were just talking about them, but the year they lost. But the 2013 Seattle Seahawks, easily one of the top 5 defensive units in the NFL history, right? You had the Legion of Boom, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas. They're flying around, they're hitting folks, they're picking balls off. I mean, it was just impressive to watch. But that was the secondary. You get a little closer to the line of scrimmage, you got 2 stud linebackers and Bobby Wagner, who's now essentially a Hall of Famer, probably first ballot guy, and KJ Wright, who's pretty damn good in his own right. You got 2 stud linebackers that can step in, stop the run, they can blitz, they can do everything. They can actually cover too. So you got those are your linebackers. You get to the defensive line. At that time, you had Chris Clemens, Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett. You can move him around, chess piece. You can kick in defensive tackle. You had Pro Bowlers. You had elite players at all 3 levels. This was a really good defense. They were an example of just a totally dominant defense. They were number 1 in the league for obvious reasons. On the other end, another example, you have the 2009 Saints. Couldn't be any more freaking opposite. I don't think they just really weren't special defensively. I think they were something like 25th ranked in the league, right? That's how average they were, right? So they only had about 3 stars. So Jonathan Vilma, Darren Sharper, and then you had Will Smith, the late Will Smith, RIP. But everyone else was pretty much role players. Guys came in and did their jobs, right? They couldn't stop the run very well. They didn't have a great pass defense, right? A lot of people kind of get misled by some other statistics. And hell, they actually weren't even really good at rushing the passer. They were average, right? They were the league average. I think they had 35 sacks. But they did one thing great. What was the one thing they did great? They could take the ball away. They were good at forcing turnovers. It was their bread and butter. They had 26 interceptions and they had 15 forced fumbles. And they scored on defense a whopping 7 times, right? So it wasn't pretty when you're watching them paint this picture. Granted, they had that dominant offense with Drew Brees, but that strength of taking the ball away, it showed up for crucial moments for them to kind of get them over the hump and help them win a Super Bowl championship. Great overall. You're either great overall or you're great at one thing. So there has to be greatness in there somewhere. You can't just be completely subpar, completely average, and think you're going to win a Super Bowl championship, right? It just doesn't work that way. So that's 3. Gotta be some greatness on defense. Now 4, championship teams have a serviceable quarterback that plays within their system. People are going to hate me for this, especially in the modern NFL, right? Where it gets excited on all these big name celebrity quarterbacks, right? So you guys realize I said serviceable, right? I didn't say superstar, I said serviceable. I'm going to say this. You do not need the greatest quarterback prospect that ever lived to win a championship. You don't. If that was the case, Dan Marino would have a championship, and Aaron Rodgers, who's at the house like me, he'd have more than one. There have been plenty of examples. I think there have been some good examples over the past 5 years. The most popular probably being Nick Foles in 2017. Carson Wentz goes down against the Rams, tears his knee. Nick Foles comes in. It's not pretty at first, But Doug Peterson goes back in that 2013 Philadelphia Eagles tape. He sees what Nick Foles, what he's comfortable with, right? Some RPO, some run pass options. He implements that in the offense. They're a really talented team overall, but essentially he rides Nick Foles to Philadelphia's first ever championship. So that's one example. In 2015, we saw the Broncos on the back of a dominant defense, right? Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, Akeem Talib, right? Just to name a few. We saw them win a championship, beat a really good Carolina Panthers team with a way past his prime Peyton Manning. And I mean way. It was almost painful to watch. He just looked like a shell of himself. And they won the Super Bowl with him playing that way. But what did he do? He didn't turn the ball over. Well, he did turn the ball over. I want to say he had like 2 interceptions, but he played within their system even before, you have Brock Osweiler playing a lot that year. He just played within their system. They didn't try to do anything too exotic offensively. They just had a quarterback that was serviceable, that could get the job done, right? And that's living proof. And then another example that people probably won't even like me for is that you look at Tom Brady's last 2 championships. As much as I love him, and respect what he's doing for the game, greatest guy to ever play the position, but I think he was a little bit closer to game manager his last 2 Super Bowl championships. He had dominant defense both times, right? 2019, they had the number 1 defense. And then obviously most recently in 2018, and obviously most recently in 2020, he had that dominant pass rush with Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, Vita Vea. Their defense was flying around hitting people. So my case is that Tom Brady, it wasn't like he was lighting the world on fire to win some of these football games. It was more of a shared effort, and the defense was kind of leading the pack when it comes to that. You can win with a QB that isn't special. That is a thing. Right? I know it's shocking to be like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, you can do it. It's possible. So 5, and this was my favorite. Championship teams are battle tested. Battle tested is important. What does battle tested mean? It means that you can overcome consistent adversity to make it to the playoffs, to make it into the dance. So it could be a few different things. Maybe it was a big injury to a star player. Right? A lot of teams can't overcome that. Maybe you had struggles on offense early on. Maybe you had struggles on defense. Maybe the chemistry just wasn't right in the locker room. Or maybe you came out, this happens all the time. Maybe you came out the gate slow, right? You lost a few games early on and you had to dig yourself out of a hole to kind of salvage the season. I mean, hell, we just saw San Francisco do that. They're looking pretty good in the playoffs. So these things happen more often than not, but the teams that can overcome them, those are the teams that you don't want to play in January. Right, because at this point they've been through everything. They've kind of developed a blue collar type of mindset. They're fighters, and yeah, they've overcome a whole hell of a lot of adversity. So, for example, we get caught up in Mahomes mania, right? He's a worldwide celebrity, right? Some consider him the best quarterback in the National Football League, so, and everyone loved when he won that championship in 2019. But I think what a lot of people forget how that season played out for them. The first half of the season, defensively, they were amongst the worst units in football. I mean, and probably worse than this year. They had similar. Secondary was bad. They couldn't stop the run very well. They weren't rushing the passer at a high clip and getting a lot of sacks. Just a very poor defense overall, and they almost threatened to be like the Achilles heel for them, and preventing them from even having a chance to win a championship. Not only that, there was a point in the season where they had to call Uncle Rico, right? Uncle Rico, aka Matt Moore. Matt Moore was coaching high school football. They had to call him, and he had to come in and start three games for them because Patrick Mahomes had a knee injury that looked serious when it happened. I'm like, man, he's done for the season, but it turned out to just be a sprain, and he came back about a month later. So, you got to fight through not only a bad defense trying to figure it out, but you come through you lose your starting quarterback, your star quarterback, you lose him for 3 games. Man, that's a lot. They fought through it. And obviously, we saw the end result. They won their first Super Bowl championship. Another example, most recently, we were just talking about I was just talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right, from last year. They were a talented team. I think everyone knew that. Tampa Bay was talented, hell, before Tom Brady even got there. They were a very talented team, but they were inconsistent. right? You saw Tom Brady didn't have chemistry with those receivers early on. The timing was terrible. We saw that week 1 when they got blown out by by the New Orleans Saints that year. They had some injuries on defense. They got embarrassed. The Saints didn't just beat them week 1. The Saints beat them both times they played them, and they beat them embarrassingly. They blew them out both times. Tampa Bay Buccaneers also lost a few other big games to some contenders. I want to say the Rams, the Chiefs, right, just to name a couple. So everyone kind of counted them out. I was on that bus. It's not that I thought that they were a bad team. I just didn't see them winning the Super Bowl. I thought they were just going to be maybe one and done, maybe win one playoff game and then kind of bow out gracefully. But no, they were able to regroup. They went into a bye week. They regrouped. They came out and they went on a 7-8 game winning streak. And they won a Super Bowl. I tell people this all the time. A team that's battle tested is the most dangerous team that you can play in the postseason. Now, on the other end, teams that scare me, and I'm not saying scare like, oh, they're just so dominant. Teams that are like 13-3, 14-2. Oh, God bless us, 15-1. I'm very wary of those teams because to me, what it says is that they haven't been in a fist fight. They haven't been in a knockout, drag out. Even if they have some tough wins, they haven't lost enough games to really have an understanding of what their flaws are. So, you get in the playoffs, look at the 2019 Baltimore Ravens. I want to say they only lost 1 or 2 games that year. And then they got smacked in the mouth by the Tennessee Titans. One and done, and they were the number 1 seed in the AFC. Teams that don't lose a lot of games, they scare me. Not tough enough. Battle-tested teams. They've been through a lot of situations, overtime, injuries, adversity, and they're more well-equipped to kind of take on the rigors of an NFL postseason. Now, a quick segue for my casual fans is if I need one at this point, because you guys ain't got a lot of breakdown. When you guys are judging football games, this is especially for people that are just so new to football, casual fans, don't judge games off of big names, right? I hate that. Don't judge the outcome of games off of big name players. Oh, this team has Odell Beckham, so they're going to win a champ. It doesn't work that way, right? Look at matchups. You need to look at how teams match up, how they stack up against each other, right? Strengths and weaknesses. So I give you the perfect example. San Francisco is probably the perfect not the perfect. They were a bad matchup for my Cowboys. Obviously, you guys know I'm a Cowboys fan, but they were a bad matchup for Dallas, due to their ability. They can run the football at a very high clip, very physical football team. And on the defensive end, they can dominate the line of scrimmage with only 4 defensive linemen. Right. So they don't need to bring five in the box, a safety have to walk up. They don't have to do that. So on the offensive end, not only are they running the football and dominating time of possession, keeping the offense off the field, keeping them cold. On the defensive side, since they can get home with 4 and stop the run with 4, they can drop extra bodies in coverage to kind of help that secondary out. In the end, like I said, just a very bad matchup. It didn't matter that Dallas had big names, Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, Zeke Elliott, Micah. That didn't matter. The bad matchup mattered. So big names don't matter. Matchups matter. But that was it. That was the 5 attributes of a championship team. Just to kind of recap them for you. Number 1, teams that win championships have depth. Number 2, teams that win championships have a defined offensive identity. Number 3, a championship team must have a defense that is either great or great at one thing, right? Number 4, championship teams have a serviceable quarterback that plays within their system. He doesn't try to get exotic. He doesn't try to get cute. He plays within the confines of his system, right? You can win that way. It's been proven, right? 5, championship teams are battle tested. Right? They're not this pretty team with a nice uniform that they haven't scuffed up, they haven't gotten dirty. No, they've got down and dirty. They've won in overtime. They've lost in overtime. They've lost players. They've had backups step up. The whole 9. Those are the teams that ultimately win when we're in January and it's time to win a championship. I hope you guys took notes. And as always, if you guys had fun, please subscribe. We're on all major platforms. Apple, Google, Spotify. And if you guys want to chat with me in the Rooted in Sports community, just check us out. We're on Twitter Spaces now. Every Saturday, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Yes, I'm a West Coast kid. Come check me out, tap in. And I also encourage you guys, once again, share this with your friends that are new to sports. Just want to learn, want to hear something digestible. That's why, that's why I structured this podcast specifically for those people. Just go ahead and shoot them over the link so they can join our secret garden as well, right? So, until then, it's always a pleasure. To new listeners, welcome aboard, and I'll see you guys next time.